What was it that made that space what it was?
I think there was like a groundedness in that space. Like I remember visiting him in the hospital, but that was before he went into hospice. And I think that was a time in which what I noticed was kind of the beginning of that emergence of Care Network. But I think when he made that decision to very publicly say, I'm going into hospice, this is a decision that I'm making, like it felt like the public nature of Emet declaring that actually was a call to the community. So there was like almost like a settled nature to it. And like I don't think I ever went there where there was not at least 3 other people there. Like it was just always, there were always people there. And it felt like a very grounded space. And what I mean by that is like people felt like they were settling in with him. Like as he was settling into this space in a way, I felt like there were people there who were doing that alongside him. And there was just this like commitment to that and commitment to him. Emet created spaciousness for people there.
Who knew that hospice could be a place of hospitality?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think that we think about hospice as like, and it is in a way, right? As departure. But in many ways, Emet's space created hospice as a welcoming and a place for settling. So it wasn't just Emet's space. It was like everyone's space. And he was so committed to his community in that way too.
Yeah.
My mom always said, she was like, when you're a good friend, you have good friends. And I think Emet was a really good friend.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing that's come out of my conversations is that like for every person who was friends with Emet, he was their best friend.
Yeah. Right. That's the kind of person that he was. And it's also because he demonstrated what it meant to just show up as you are. He did have a honesty to his spirit of like, I'm not going to sugarcoat what's happening. I'm like, this is what's really happening for me. And I think that when someone demonstrates honesty and vulnerability in that way, it invites other people to do the same. And I think that probably speaks to the way in which people connect to him so deeply, is that his ability to be real allows other people that space as well.
He did something revolutionary in the way that he asked for help.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. After he died, the next Shabbat, I was giving a sermon, and that's what my sermon was about Emet's ability to call out and ask for help, and how powerful that is to do that, and how countercultural. And to just say, I need this. I think it's such a powerful model. And again, it's honest.
He invited us into relationship with him in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing he demonstrated was like all relationships are powerful and holy too. Whether or not you knew someone since you were, 5, or you just met them a few months ago. Like he really invited everybody in. And I think people felt that. Like there was a lot of diversity in the room of who was spending time there.
You remember that that sign that he put on the door at the second hospice center? The sign that said, new friends always welcome.
That was pretty amazing. That space was built and sustained too. Like I said, I mean, I probably visited about once a week since he went into hospice, and there was never a time where there was less than 3 people in that room. Like it was just constant. And then there would be people who would just come in once in a while too. In some ways, his hospice space operated in a way that we sometimes see at Shivas, which was coming in and just being there, not having an agenda, just being there to honor and to be in company. And I don't know if we always do that when people are alive, which I know was one of his visions for having the living funeral too. And so there was not Shiva because he was alive very much, but the spaciousness, again, I keep going back to that word, of the Shiva, I feel like was felt sometimes in his space too. And I only use Shiva because it's an example I can think of, but in some, yeah, it was like a way in which to bring those customs to us as we live too.
For a brief second in time, a brief moment in time, there was a congregation that existed, of which he was the rabbi.
Yeah, I mean, people were literally at his feet. The day he died, I went to see him that morning, and there was this like beautiful collection of cards and paintings and glitter, and then Tamar Kamenikowski's Leviticus book. And I was like, this says it all, but all around that were humans. And I feel like, I guess that's another word that I think of is the space was bright, like both in technicality with all the rainbows and glitter, but also in spirit. Like there was just a lot of brightness to it.
Tell me about the decorations that are everywhere. What colors did you see?
I feel like a lot of like pink and purple and yellow, like just like really bright colors everywhere. There were often, I think, like pictures of dinosaurs like hanging up. Coloring that was on the wall. And people were contributing to that. And like, I think that that's also a sign that people were not rushing out. Like there was not an agenda. People were like, yeah, I'm going to sit here and color. And that's also a testament to the space that was built. And I think that there was like not a pressure to have any sort of specific even interaction with Emet. Like it wasn't like you were there and you were like, okay, I need his undivided attention. Because first off, you might not get that. Because it's just like he was very popular in the sense he was like being drawn to a lot of different things. Like, but that wasn't what was important too. Like just being there in the same space. I feel like that was what was important. This is the space I'm setting up. Come in, like you'll have your moment, and also like you'll be there with community. There's like a assumption that things need to be overly facilitated. And I think sometimes when you just let people be, you actually learn how much people will just step up and connect in their own ways. And I think Emet was good at that. He just assumed like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring all these people together and it's going to work out. And it did. I think Emet assumed that we would all be able to be together and that would overwhelmingly be a good thing. And I think he was right. It's an act of faith to not be attached to an outcome, to say like, I'm here right now, period, and to try to be present in that way. And I think that is actually very core to the space that Emet created is a feeling of presence. And maybe that's what I mean by spaciousness, is like, there didn't feel like there was a rush to get somewhere.
What do you think it was about like the people in the room? What was it about like their skill sets that made that space possible? Like, how was it organized?
Like people just stepping up to the plate, like gaps being filled by being there, of like people just saying, oh yeah, I can do this, this and that. And like, it felt like people were very inspired to like to step up in those ways. And so self-organized, I guess, is maybe more
Mhm.
word I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
of like people just saying like, oh yeah, I see this gap. I'm gonna fill it. I'm here. I can do that. And I think that that speaks to what we were talking about of Emet being really good at asking for help. And I think when someone asks for something, most of the time people are going to answer, and there's a way in which I think because it was such an in-person environment, like people were just often there hanging out, that when something was asked, like people are going to step up and do it. And it felt like there was a lot of self-accountability.
I would agree with that, like about it being like a self-organized
Yeah.
effort. And there was like an element of like decentralization.
Yes.
And I think that kind of speaks to like the fact that we had a lot of organizers in the room
Yeah.
who were a part of movements that were decentralized.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And people who just get things done and believe that we can. And I think that that also speaks to people feeling empowered. Emet was such an empowered person. And like, I think that when Emet wanted to do something, it was going to happen. He had a very much like, if there's a will, there's a way sort of mentality. And so I think other people, he modeled that for us, and then we did it. There's a way in which it's good to dream, and then sometimes we dream, but we don't execute. And like, that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to just dream. But Emet, like his dreams, he really tried to put them into fruition too. And so I think that seemed to be an organizing principle of the space. And I think one of the lessons of empowerment I learned from him was what I was saying before of like asking for help and just trusting that your community will do that, and really trusting that. Like, I think that that's like truly, truly trusting that people are going to step up and do this for you. And people did.
Yeah.
I don't think he was alone at all. I think in that sermon I gave, I said that I was like 2 months, right? How long was he in hospice? 2 months?
3 months at least.
3 months. I don't think he spent a single night alone. It's amazing. And like, it's amazing. And that's partly because of his amazing friends, but also it's because he said, I don't want to spend a night alone. And then people made that happen. And like, that is so powerful to think about. I have this desire for myself. I'm going to name it. And then people are going to do it. And I think that that's like a ripple effect that we're going to be seeing in all of the people whose lives he touched for the rest of our lives, I think.
What was helpful was that we had so many rabbinical students and rabbis in that room.
Yeah.
That were a lot of people coming in with like skill sets around chaplaincy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that impacted the space?
I think it impacted the space in honoring what it means to just be there, to not have an expectation, like I said, not have an expectation, to just be there. And that's a way to honor people, is to just show up. Like, that's it. That's the most important thing. Everything else is like extra and is actually like somewhat peripheral. Like, you just being there, that's the most important thing. So I think having that ethos is core. I also think an acknowledgement of the reality of the situation. And I think that a lot of people, and was also, I think, kind of countercultural in Emet's experience, a lot of people don't want to talk about death. They're in denial. They don't want to think that this is going to happen. And I think as rabbis, we're trained to ground people in reality. And so there's not a need to say, oh, everything's going to be okay, whatever that means. It's like, oh, you're in a lot of pain today. That's the experience that you're having. There was an honesty, I think, in that room around that too. And I think because there was that space for 3 months where people were living into this reality, that I think it didn't make his passing any easier, but it made us more honest. At RC, we were saying that there was glitter in the hallways for, honestly, I was gonna say days, but maybe months after the funeral. And that felt like such a yeah, such a testament to who he was, that like the glitter is bold and bright, and it's also connected with pain, like all of it, anything like that. I guess that's like my biggest takeaway from him. It's like he was so upfront about the fullness of his humanity.